Let that one sink in, folks. Look where we are. Really, the worst war, the most intense war that was ever been televised. What's going on right now? But it's not televised on the Western mainstream media. That's the point. It's televised on YouTube on a whole bunch of channels all around the world. But the lemmings in the U.S., the lemmings being controlled, who are watching mainstream media, they'll never know.
This is the B-1 Lancer bomber, which cost the American taxpayer $283 million each. And this is what it did on May the 4th, 2009, in Farah province, Afghanistan, following false intelligence of Taliban in a village. Its victims were some of the poorest people on earth. Guy Smallman is an independent photojournalist and the first Westerner to arrive in the village following the bombing.
The first strike happened outside the village mosque, which was the first place that I was taken to, was just a mass of craters, and several bombs had fallen in that area. Then after that, the women and children were evacuated to a compound in the far north of the village. And again, their heat signatures were picked up by the bomber crew. And a 2,000-pound bomb was dropped into the middle of them, and that was where the majority of the people died.
Sound like familiar to you folks? 2,000-pound bombs that are being dropped in Palestine, in Rafah, and Gaza repeatedly, and now in Lebanon, 2,000-pound bombs, indiscriminately just mass murdering people. They say they're going after the terrorists. If you think that's true, then ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox News, and everything else, you've done a great job keeping the American lemmings dumber than a box full of rocks. The only problem is maybe you'll be held accountable. Wouldn't that be great, where you lose your licenses?
What struck me when I was going in there was the silence. I mean, the Afghan countryside is usually a symphony of birdsong, and it was absolutely dead quiet, and the locals had done their best to collect all the bodies and the body parts, but there were still flies swarming all around the area, and there was still a very pungent smell of death, very heavy in the air. I think the thing that struck me more than anything else was the children. It was almost as if all their energy and emotions had been drained out of them, and they would stare right through me and my translator into the middle distance. They didn't laugh, they barely spoke at all. And that, I think, left the most lasting impression. And I was given quite a grim tour of where people were buried. In a lot of cases, entire families were buried in the same grave. I think I counted just over 70 new graves, fresh graves. And then at one far end of the cemetery, there's an enormous mass grave which is around 30 metres across. And in that grave are the remains of 55 people. And they had to be buried there together because they were quite literally blown into pieces. And it was impossible to tell who was who. So they had to bury them together in one long trench. And then there was the difference about the casualties. The local people insisted that over 140 civilians had died, and NATO said there was 25.
So the deaths of 147 people, including 93 children, became a dispute over...
It became a dispute over a body count and nothing more. Now, I know for a fact that the pictures taken by the Afghan radio journalists were out there. I know that stringers on the ground were filing those pictures. And I mean, a lot of those pictures were very graphic, but a lot of them, did show people digging bodies out of the rubble. It did show those bodies lined up for burial.
Why do you think British audiences and other Western audiences have no real sense of an atrocity of this scale?
I think people become desensitized to it. When they're told on the news a wedding party has been attacked by accident, a compound has been bombed by accident, a farmer and his family have been killed by accident, they don't really connect with it because they don't actually get to see those bodies.
The faces, the names, and
the names. It's just a number, whether they're Afghans or Iraqis or Lebanese civilians. They're just numbers. And it's perhaps easy to understand why British Muslims feel completely disenfranchised from our domestic news services.
I think the press really conspires to play down the carnage in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Look what they're doing now. Jesus. You know, wake up, folks. There's nothing you can do to stop this war, but there is something you can do to stop all future wars. Vote every Republican and Democrat out that supports this war. Remember, it was never an unprovoked attack. The Palestinian people, the Arab people, the Muslim people have been living in a concentration camp, an apartheid state, since 1948. So let's get it straight here, folks. No more politicalization that Israel are the chosen ones, Israelis. No, maybe they're the chosen ones that bring on World War III and then ends the whole world. You know, oh, the end times are coming. Yeah, this is the nut jobs that are running our system. Republicans and Democrats beholding themselves to a genocidal, maniacal, homicidal infanticide that's going on. That means the killing of little babies. And you want to vote them back into office? Vote them out. 2024. Vote green. Anybody else, flush the toilet. You might find a few people that still are talking out against the war. Don't vote them out. But the rest of them, flush the toilet.